They're already having a conversation there. You go.
Okay. First, I thought I will review what we discussed in the last meeting. Tolhapian view of Sayuriel is it's on, right?
It's on, yeah.
Is all-compassive. The study of Sayur for him includes the structural aspects as well as the poetic and aesthetic aspects, what we would now call prosody and poetics. Whereas in the later period, the structural aspects are taken out from Sayuriel, or Sayuriel is viewed as having the structural aspect, which is called Yapial, and then Sayuriel, which is another chapter in Yapurangalam, puts the other things which Sayuriel in Tolhapian takes. So there is a separation of the aspects of Sayur. Generally, it is considered later development attributed to Yapurangalam. But Yapurangalam follows many of the views of Kakaipadiniyam, and Kakaipadiniyam is said to be a classmate of Tolhapia. But I think this legend could be seen as kind of a parallel school of thought at the time of Tolhapiam. I say this because Tolhapiam itself uses Yapu in two senses. He uses the word Yapial itself in the sense of discipline of Yapu, attributes it to his contemporaries or predecessors, but also he uses it as one of the units are Urupu. Right? But the problem is that the word yel he uses in two senses. One in the rest of Tolhapiam, like Sayuriel or Marabiel, etc., it is a chapter or a discipline. But he also uses, when he talks about the unit of Sayur, as Eruthiel. It's just Eruthu. So there he uses yel in the sense of category or something, or nature of Eruthu. Yel from the sense of nature. See, he uses that. So one sense is yel from the meaning of nature. The other is yel in the sense of movement or related thoughts which would make it discipline. So that my sense is that it might be misleading to say that these are later developments and these were parallel thoughts or schools at the time of Tolhapiam, but later on Yapurangalam takes over the Tolhapia's visualization or conceptualization of Sayur. This is similar to Tolhapia's conceptualization of Omayel is taken over by Anilakkanam. Right? This, interestingly, doesn't take place with Nannul. I mean, Nannul doesn't take over the ideas of Tolhapiam. Even the commentators do not try to find Nannul's ideas in Tolhapiam as they tried to find Yapurangalam's ideas in Tolhapiam. If you read Ilamburana, he tries to locate all ideas in Yapurangalam in Tolhapiam itself, see, by various devices. The only person who resists is Perasiriya. And Nachinarkanian follows, according to one count, about 80% of what Perasiriya says, so you could add Nachinarkanian also to this resistance thought to this taking over of different parallel or later ideas into Tolkapian itself. In his commentary, Perasariyar mentions that Yappadiharam enba. So he recognizes that the structural aspects get a different name, Yappadiharam, but he rejects that by saying that he rejects that, and he makes one argument which is like this. You give a name Yapadiharam because Yapu is opposed to other aspects of Seyur and therefore it's an Adhiharam. If that is true, then another opposition is between Vadakku and Seyur. So you should have Vadakkadiharam. And there is no Vadakkadiharam in Tamil tradition, and therefore Yapadiharam is not an acceptable discipline, acceptable division of the knowledge about Seyur. We will see as we go along, Perasariyar seems to be resisting these kinds of new developments in Seyuriya. At one point, he even says that when there is no evidence for a statement in Tolkappiyam in any of the literature from Sangam down, he says that this must have been a fact of literature in Idachangam and Mudal Changam, right? So he doesn't want to concede that it never existed, something something like that. So when it comes to Yaparangalam, he makes a definite statement which says that unlike Sayuriya, he says எழுத்து, Asai, Sir, Talai, Adi, Todai, Tuk. எழுத்து அசை சீர் தழை அடி தொடை தூக்கு இசை இவ் ஏழு உறுப்பினும் தீர்ந்து யாப்பு உண்டோ எனின் இல்லை. So it's very categorical. So yapu doesn't have more than these three, right? Seven, right? Whereas Tolkappiyam, the total is 34, right? So he takes out the building blocks and and puts the limit that it is 7. See, there are two things to be noted in this. One is Mathirai is missing here. Tolkappiyam starts with Mathirai, Eluthu, and then goes to Asai, Sir, Talai, Adi, etc. So there must be a reason for dropping Mathirai. My reasoning is like this. I think what happens in Yaparangalam is what is done by Mathirai, those functions are transferred to Eluthu, and therefore Mathirai becomes redundant. See, if you look at Mathirai, it doesn't have a function of categorizing Asai. So if you say Nair, it has both short vowel and long vowel, right? And Nirai, you have two short vowels or one short vowel and long vowel. Therefore, you could, Nair and Nirai are categorized or defined in terms of Eluthu, not in terms of Mathirai. That is one thing. And Mathirai is used for measuring Asai in a seed, right? And the term they use is Alahidudal, right? This Alahidudal is different from Kanakidudal, and Kanakidudal is used with Mathirai, right? This word has so many Mathirais or something like that. So when you come to Alahidudal, we will see some of the specific specific examples like this. So if you take Eluthu, see, besides the letters of the letters of the basic alphabet, that is the what Tolapia says 33, the 12 vowels and 18 consonants and 3 Sarbalutu. So you have, under Sarbalutu you have Kurukam and you have Alabadai. Right? So the Alabadai and Kurukam are defined by Matra. Right? Alabadai has 3 and Kurukam has half. Or if it is Kurukam of a consonant, then it is 1/4 of a matra, right? So, but when you come to the measuring assay in seed, we'll see that there are certain in certain places you will have to discount, or I mean, if they use the Tamil word is to unmeasure the kurukam. In some cases you would measure the kurukam. So what Yaparangalam does is that you can extend this concept of measuring to the basic vowels and consonants, as well as Alabadai and Kurukam. So you don't have to do it only for I mean, in other words, in the earlier system you have 2 ways of measuring asai. One is by the matra, another is by alagidal. So I think the later theory tries to make it uniform, so you don't have to count the matra. You can just say whether it comes under alagu or not, and that could be explained by using the idea of letters. Right? So Alabadai would be called extra vowel rather than 3 matra. And then Kurukam would be called Kurukam would be handled again using little Hafiz idea, giving a name, right? So Kutil Uharam is not just a reduced matra, but it is a different letter. Right? Even though the Tamil graphology doesn't allow that. You see, it's the same character, I mean, same scripture, but it has a name. So you can refer it to by that name, then it becomes a letter. So I think these are the ways they try to remove or drop matrai from one of the units of Sayur. My sense is, just by my hearsay about Sanskrit, this makes it properly closer to the Sanskrit system of prosodic analysis. That is not using matrai, but even Lagu and Guna are just short vowel and long vowel.
Well,
right?
One of the 2 systems of metrics, of Sanskrit meters, Sanskrit and Prakrit meters, Indo-Aryan meters, let's call them, use it. Andrew's not here today, is he? No. He actually uses matra as a
He is there.
No,
He's there.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, well, Andrew gets, ask Andrew.
Yeah.
I agree with everything Whitney says. But yeah, I mean, there's matra counting meters and syllable counting meters, but it's an interesting question to see if you can actually convert between them by converting matra shapes into particular syllables. I haven't thought of it.
I mean, because I would have actually thought that it might have been just, and this is just a very prima facie hypothesis, that it might have actually been trying to extract something that actually has the stamp of Sanskrit metrics on it, even at the terminological level. So we can account for it by using using these other systems that are internal to grammatical thinking in Tamil. So why bother to reach out to this other system?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I think the motivation is probably internal, as I tried to argue, but it seems to make it closer to the Sanskrit system. I don't know. I mean, I cannot say that. I don't know. I don't know anything about Sanskrit system. So, but this is I think this is a substantial theoretical change, because usually in Tamil writing, I just find statements like Tolapir uses Matrai and Yaprakaram drops it. I mean, nobody has discussed, as far as I know, why they dropped Matra. I think that's an interesting question
Can
we had
I
to ask.
make
Yeah.
an observation about the Matra?
Yeah.
So in the system that you laid out for us last week, Matra were associated with particular segments.
Yeah.
And another way of Matra is, the modern way of thinking about moras is by associating them with syllables, although they are functions of the segments in a syllable. So you might say that if you have the syllable already and you know what the segments in a syllable are, you might not need the additional category of Matra.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then the question comes: does theory of Sayul, prosody, lose anything by dropping matra? Right? Matra, in a way, contributes to osai. Right? I mean, osai is the parameter under which these verse types operate, but not in the sense of changing or adding the four basic osai, right, associated with four types, but it adds something extra to it. I mean, that's why I sent you the two verses about using short and long duration and short duration. See, one is Mavarade, Mavarade. See, that is one. Mava Rade, Mava Rade. Right. This is a line from a Puram poem. This is about the heroine waiting for the horse, that is the hero, to return. It doesn't return, right? So, this, commentators point out that the osai is different, but when they say osai is different, they don't say it's not a haval osai. It is a haval osai. It is an astriya. But when you compare it with the other line, which is something like Kurangulai, whatever that line is, so that's all short. Kuril, right? Kurangulai. Last line is Koisuvar Puravi. Right? So that line, except I, it all has short vowels. So if you read it, you will see that that osa is different from Mavarade, Mavarade, Mavarade. So it also goes with the Mavarade, the use of the longer duration brings out the ethos of wailing, see, when the hero is not coming. Whereas this one with the short, the short vowel which goes quickly, is kind of representing the mood of palpitation when she is anticipating his Kurangulai Pulinda Koisuvar Puravi. This is a Ahananuru poem where the Talavi is waiting for the return of the hero, and the Mullai has blown, but she doesn't hear the bell of the returning Ter. And Todi consoles her, saying that he might have tied the tongue of the bell in order not to disturb the bees which are enjoying the honey. Right? So she doesn't hear anything about his return, and therefore there is anxiety, and that palpitation, I think, comes out through this this entire adi being in shorter duration, right? So Mathurai does play a role, but it is a role of superimposing another dimension of Osai in the basic for Osai. So it's an Asariya which you could which is differentiated by this Asai, and the same thing could be done by other paths also. So this feature would be called Varnam. I mean, Tolkapia's 34 units also has Varnam. Varnam probably is from Varna, from Varnam color. But here the Varnam refers to the sounds. Varnam basically is a repetitive pattern of different units. Right? Tolkapia mentions that there are 20 Varnams, and when you come to Yaparangalam, there are 100 Varnams. Right? So it is units. For example, if you take Mathurai, if the Mathurai repeats, as in these two lines, that is one Varnam. Right? This Varnam is based on Mathurai. But what Kalam would say is that this Varnam is based on Eluthu, right? Long letters and short letters, rather than the Mathurai. Right? So they can bring it, they can explain the function of Mathurai to add another dimension to Osai by using the letters rather than Mathurai. So probably they didn't lose anything by dropping the unit of Mathurai, right?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So so I can see how you would be if you're only dealing with short vowels in one osai and only long vowels in the other osai.
Yeah.
Then you can replicate the use of Mathurai simply by using this distinction between erupta. But if you had short vowels followed by consonant clusters, that would presumably also give you a kind of heavy osai. So da 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 da, and that sounds like it would be a little bit more difficult to describe as in terms of its difference from the da 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 osai. Was that clear? Or?
I don't know whether they have the concept of heavy and strong as it is in English prosody, but if you are talking about the letters, see, one of the Varnams would be the repetition of hard consonant, stop consonant. Another would be repetition of nasals, and another would be repetition of the Eluthu. I mean, this is based on Eluthu. Again, so later on, this Varnam is developed into Sandam, right? When you come to Sandam part, etc. But you are saying something different, right?
Well, it's just a question of whether, in terms of the rhythm or the osai of a verse, whether this system of using letters or segments rather than Mathurai could capture the fact that heavy syllables, so closed syllables, would pattern in the same way as open syllables that happen to have long vowels. So that verse that you cited with all long vowels, it would have the same kind of rhythm as heavy syllables.
Yeah, it is quite possible, but what they would do, I imagine, is that you would have a new Varnam, which would say that the words which end in consonant, which don't end in consonant, or the seals which end in, because Varnam also includes seals, right? When the seal is there is a repetitive pattern of Matirai, Asai, Seed, and they expand it to also meaning. Certain meaning is it becomes repetitive. That's another one now. Right? So they would take it as seed. I mean, that kind of thing as a repetitive pattern of seed, and some seeds end in consonant, some seeds ends in vowel. So that would take care of the closed and open syllables.
But if I can jump in too. So these two examples, the Mavarade, and then this Kurangole Polinde Boichi verse. So these both is their status in the tradition is that they evidently violate the rules of the osei, but they're allowable because of their kind of there's a kind of aesthetic motivation in the course of the verse. Is that
it's the second one. There's no violation. They say that it gives. I mean, they simply say this gives a different osei. These two lines have different osei.
Relative
but this osei is not the four osei. I mean, they are not saying that one line is ahabal and another is sepal. Right? But the ahabal is there, the basic one, and then you could add. I would call this Vannam as an embellishment, whereas so if you look at it as an embellishment, so you can embellish the four basic osais with various devices, and one is Vannam.
Okay. But is the problem a terminological one, that's still being called osei when you're saying that rather than being, so we talked about this last time a little bit.
I think they use osei ambiguously.
Yeah, okay.
And they also use isai ambiguously. Sometimes they use isai in the sense of osei, and sometimes in the sense of music. Right. So, I mean, in terms of terminology, they are very ambiguous. Are ambivalent.
Right. But so in every case, these would these two lines would answer to the we can postulate rules for what constitutes Asiriyapa line. These would be obedient to those rules.
Right.
But they seem
but
they're anomalous in some way, and that we're accounting for by saying because of the emotional contour.
If you take that first one, Mavarade, Ellar Mavu Vandana, Yemil Pudure Kudimi Pudal Tanda, they would meet the metrical requirements of Asiriyapa. Right? But in addition, this kind of embellishment is added to that, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So if in at least in theory, if Yaparangalam has 100 Vannam, right? You can take an Asiriyapa and think of 100 kind of embellishments like this, right? Yeah. So there is no violation of the metrical requirements of Asiriyapa or any pa.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's I think in one sense from I mean one aspect of from one point of view of science, I would say that the prosodic theory is weak in the sense that falsifiability is extremely difficult, right? Because whatever you change, you could give a name to it and then say this is a new new thing, right? Yeah, but that's about science, not about prosody. Okay. Then, so the point I wanted to make was that whether you lose something in the analysis of prosody by dropping Matre. Right. I'm trying to say that you could do whatever you did with Matirai, you can do with Eduthu, right? So they are happy with that. That's what my reading of that, right? As I said in the first meeting, all generalizations I make are hypothetical, right? Are even speculative, because I haven't done research to say whether I could find any counterexample somewhere in the whole literature. There might be something, right? The other one is in the classification of Asai, Tolhapium has 4, right? As we saw, Ner, Nerbu, Nirai, Niraibu, right? Then for Arabadai, normally you don't give a Vaivadu or a formula like this, but there's Gopalaya gives that, I don't know where he took it from, for the formula for Arabadai, the formula with Arabadai in Nair would be Ne short A Ir, Ne Ir. He gives that as a formula. And then for Nirai, it's Nirai vowel E. Nirai. Yeah, right. That is what he cites, but he doesn't. His citation is in his memory, so he doesn't give who says that. I have not seen anywhere. But Nerbu Nerebu is very common. So the Nerbu Nerebu is also has some relevance to Mathura, in the sense that in terms of Mathura, it adds an half Matra extra. Right? Ne, if it is short vowel, it adds one more. If it is long vowel, it adds 2.5 Matra. So this is the only Asai which has a Matra counted not in whole numbers. Right? So it always would have a fraction in that. So by removing Matra, I think you gain by making it a uniform statement that no Asai has fraction Matra. Right? When you have Matra, it makes it possible to say that you could have Asais with 1 Matra, 2 Matra, or 3 Matra, and 2.5 Matra, 3.5 Matra. See, like that. So, so the change of dropping Matra helps sort of simplifying the Asai system, see, into that. At the same time, it would, if we can call it, it complicates the system in the sense that if you have 2 Asai and 4 Asai, it will have an implication to seed formation, right? With 2, the number of possible seeds would be 2 to the power of 2, right? That would be 4. Whereas with 4, it will be 2 to the power of 4, so you'll have 16 possible Asai. So that is the consequence of having or not having Nerbu and Nirebu as Asai, right? So as I said, when when you drop Nerbu and Nirebu from your Asai, then a problem comes in delineating C, right? How do you count C? So that this is where the concept of alahid comes in, right? Measuring Asai comes in. So that allows you to drop some and have some, right? It's particularly with Kurkam, so the Kutyalugaram. So they say that the Kutyalugaram could be added if it is needed for making a C, or you can drop it if you don't need it for making C. So for the last meeting, I circulated certain verses. See, like this. You see, okay. So this is an example from I think Nachinakinya, he says seed combination Setrukal Neelam. Setrukal Neelam. Here, Setru ends in Kutielagram, the U is a shortened U. That could be taken as Niraibu. Right? And whereas you cannot take in a word like Nokum, Nokuk you cannot take as Nerbu, even though it ends in U, because the word they use is Noku Moli Sidaikirathu. Right? So that is, see, the Nerbu boundary or Nerebu boundary doesn't match with the word boundary. Right? Mm-hmm. So, word boundary they include, I mean, they don't take inflection. Right? Nokum also Noku plus wum, right? But that is not the case. I mean, for them, the word boundary is without considering the inflection form. Okay. So, in Setru call Neelam, Setru call, right? Setru call is one seal. Right? But it consists of two words, Setru and call, and therefore you can break it Setru and say this is Nerbu. Right? And then Kalitru Kanam Puruda. Kalitru Kanam is one seed, so Kalitru would be Niraibu. Right? You can say Kalitru is you can have a word boundary, right? Most probably you could have a pass there, right? If you look at it from the phonetic point of view. Nokum, you will never have a pass. Right? In an inflected form, there is no pass. Whereas in compound, you could have a pass, and that pass would help you or enables you to make a cut of aside. Then Nachinar Kiniyar gives this example. Perumuttarayar, right? This has Perumuttarayar. So Perumu ends in U, but it cannot be Niraibu aside because Perumut is not a word. Yeah, there is no pass or there is no word boundary boundary there. So instead of that, I just created a word something like Porumuttalayar or something like that. Then you could say Porumu is a Nirebu Nirebu aside. And another one is the Kutyalugaram doesn't operate when you have a monosyllabic short vowel word like Madu, right? So that is always Kutyalugaram in the linguistic grammar. So if you have seer like Madu so something similar to the udder of a cow, this Madu would not be Nerbu, even though it cuts, it has a word boundary, Madu Kadukkum, right? Because Madu is a short vowel, and therefore it is not Kutyalugaram, and therefore it wouldn't qualify to be Nerbu, right? So this Nerbu and Nerebu has this additional condition that when you make a split of a seed into asais, you should take into account where the cut falls, where the cut matches with a word boundary or a pass, right? So this okay. So this okay. So this okay. This boundary need not coincide with the seed boundary. Right? It's a linguistic feature, see, which they are using. See, as I see it, when you come to this Matirai and Asai, there seems to be a kind of mixing of two, linguistic grammar and prosodic grammar or metrical grammar, and put that. Even in Kutyaluguram, which gives you Nerbu, Nerebu, Asai, they would include the wu ending words which end in nasal, like yen, etc. Right? Which would be Kutyalu. It won't be Kutyaluguram according to the linguistic grammar. And here the example they give is Anganmadiyam Aravu Vaipattana. Right? Aravu, Aravu Vaipattana. Aravu could be taken as a Nerebu aside, right? But it is in the beginning of a seed. It's not the end of the seed. So the word boundary and seed boundary are different. So basically they are looking at the word boundary, see, for a aside to qualify to be a Nerbu or Nerebu. So the point is that Nerbu and Nerebu is not just the structure of letters and matras, but also it depends on where it falls in a seed, right? So, so this, as I said, the problem which would arise by dropping Nerbu and I mean the point is those who drop Mathurai have also dropped Nerbu and Nerebu, right? So it is suggestive that there is a connection between the two. These are not two unrelated change in the theory, right? See the one so the a consequence which would come from dropping of Nerbu and Nerebu would be that you will not have any Tadai statement using Nerbu, right? Obviously that. So when you come up with problems like that, they bring in the notion of Alagida. I mean, this is there in Tolkapiam also. That would also help. As I said, for Tolkapiam, this Alagiridal would play a role when it comes to Arabadai and Kutya Ligaram and other Kurukam, right? But he, for some reason, he separates Kutya Ligaram, that Kurukam, as different and gets an Asai status, right? Not other Kurukams get an Asai status. That could be because the Tamil language has many words ending in Kutya Ligaram. So that Kurukam is more predominant, and it is also independent of Sandhi, right? If you say Kutya Ligaram, that's always a product of Sandhi, whereas Kutya Lugaram is a product of the phonetic or phonological structure of the word. Maybe that was in his mind to say that it should get a different status than other Kuruka. So, yeah. So if you take the problem, you take Thirukkural, Kulal Inidu Yalinidu Enba, right? Kulal Inidu Yalinidu Enba, that is without Sandhi. Kulal Inidu Yalinidu Enba, right? So the T, the E in T is Kutya Ligaram. The words is Kulal Inidu, Yar Inidu Enba, and the first one became T because of Ya, right? So that suppose you do the Asai parsing, right? You would say okay, Kulalini, it has two Asai. Kula is Nirai, Lini is Nirai, which is followed by Tiyalini, that's also two Nirai. Tiya is Nirai and Lini is Nirai. So when you have, we haven't come to Talai, this is a Venbak, this from Thirukkural, and to the Talai fact about Venba is that they should have non-similar asais following. Right? That is, the term they use is Nindasir and Vandasir. So the Nindasir is the standing seer, the first one, and Vandasir is the subsequent or following seer. And the last seer of last asai of the preceding seer and the first asai of the following seer must be different. Right? If one is Ner, other should be Nirai. If the one is Nirai, other should be Ner. So that is a requirement of Venba. So if you count T as in Alahidu, if you add T, then Ini, Kudalini, Ini is Nirai, Tiyalini, Tiya is Nirai, that violates Tadai of Venba. Right? So, what you do is ignore Kuchilikaram. Alahidade. Right? Don't count it. Don't measure it. Right? It will be counted for Matra as a quarter Matra. No, as a half Matra. Right? But Alahidu, when it comes to Asai, right, you don't count it. Right? So, in that case, you would have Kudal Ini, Nirai, and then if you don't have, it is Tya. Right? So that would be Nir. So you got Nirai Nir. Right? You meet the Tale. Right? Similarly, you have other things also. Okay. Yeah. So the other one which is cited by Yaparungal, I think it's in the handout, Kendayai Vendra Kilaroli Munkanal Pandayal Allal Padi. Kendayai Vendra Kilaroli. That's the first in the first line. So if you say Kendayai, Ken is Ner, I is Ner, I is Ner. So it would be Ner, Ner, Ner. And then Vendra, Ven is Ner. So it would have Ner, 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 Ner. Which is again against the Tale requirement of Venba. Right? So what you do is the middle I is Aigara Kurukam. It comes under Kurukam. So don't count it. Don't allocate it. Right? So it would be Kendayai. Right? So it would be Ner, Nirai, and then Ner, Ner. Right? So the Venba meter is met. So this goes with the phonetics of that, if I can project the modern pronunciation to the old, right? If you say Pudaivai, I mean, that's etymologically Pudaivai, but it's Pudavai spelling also, it is Pudavai. So the middle I seems to be phonetically less, right? So it should be the case with Talaivan, it should be Talaivan or something, right? It's a Talaivan, right? But that is a pure speculation for how they pronounce in that those times we don't know. So this is an instance where Aihara Kurukam is not counted. Aihara Kurukam is not Alahidu, right? Is that right? So let us take Adapade, how you do Alahidu. The example in that is Veeralapade. This is I think from Malapudukadam. It is given by Parasriya. This is Uppo. See O. See you have long vowel and short vowel. Uppo. Venavuraithu Meelval Ulimuruval. So the first one, Uppo, is Adapade. So if you count O, if you don't count, see, it would be Ner, Ner. Right? Instead of Ner, Ner, Ner. Right? And then, I'm sorry. This is again a Venba, not Asayapa. Okay. So if you take, if you count, yeah, yeah. So it is counted like Upo is counted as Ner. This is followed by Nirayasai, right?
Yeah.
And therefore it meets the requirement of Venba. So the O is not counted. I don't know why. I mean, you could also treat it as Ner, and then you would have Yana as an array. That would also meet the Talai condition. But
Can you only have Iruchir?
Yeah, I mean, Venba could have 3 seed, but I should see the next line. If the next line is 2 seed, then this also should be 2 seed. That must be the requirement there. So anyway, the point is that in Adabadai, you can drop the extra vowel in counting.
So let me, if I can ask, in that same line then, so Upo Ena Ureitu is an Ureitu and then counts as Nirebu?
It could count as Nirebu, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I never really understood how that works.
Yeah,
Okay.
it works, but yeah, but the problem yeah.
The converse question is, so the extra O, are there any cases in which it would be counted, but counted as part of the next aside? So in other words, you have a alaverai, but the long part of the vowel is counted as the end part of one aside, and the short part is counted as the next part of the following aside.
I haven't seen any such example, but I have seen examples where the extra short vowel is counted as part of the aside.
Yeah.
To meet the aside requirement of the one C requirement of one aside. See, you could have that.
But in the terms you just said of the Nindrasai, right?
Yeah, right. Nindrasai. Yeah, it will go to Nindrasai rather than one dasai. Yeah, right. Right.
Because isn't there? I mean, as in this line, I mean, and then the point you just made a moment ago, Anamai, there's normally word boundary and prosodic boundary do coincide.
Yeah.
In this period, right?
Yeah.
In this, right?
Yeah, I think throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Virutapa is a little bit different, though, right? But I think that for the 4. Let's call them classical meters, like that's normally the case.
Yeah, but Virutapa, by that time, the Nirebu Nerva concepts are gone.
Yeah,
right? So you don't worry about
right.
It's about that, right? Yeah. Okay. Then the next example is about Ottalabadai, and this is from Malayaputikada. This is Asariyappa. Right? So kan tan kandum kettum. Right. So you have Ottalabadai in two places. So if see with Ottalabadai, if you count the extra consonant, it is considered to have one matra. It's considered like a vowel. Or a consonant with a vowel. It will be counted like na rather than n, right? So if you have kan, if it is counted, it would be ner, right? So kan would be ner, and in being na would be a ner, right? So that asai, that seed would be ner seed, and then then it would be followed by tannana. See, then tan is ner, in is ner, yana is nirai, right? Tannana. So that would be ner nirai. So this is not appropriate for Asayappa. Why? Because it doesn't, it has only certain kinds of movers achieved. Right? The second one has 3 aside. Right? So this, this arrangement of Ner, Nirai is not appropriate for Asariyappa. See, what it can have, we will see when we come to Asariyappa. Asariyappa, when it allows movers achieved, it is only the Venbachi, the Kaichi. Right? It does, this one, this kind of Ner, Nirai. So the Asai, let me put it very broadly, this ends in Nirai, and the Nirai is appropriate for Vanjipa. And Vanjipa doesn't mix with Asayappa. At least in 3 asai, yeah, it does mix. But what 3 asai can mix with Asayappa is Vensi, that is the seeds which end in Ner.
Okay.
Right? So that makes it inappropriate for that. So if you drop the counting of in the second one, right, it would be tan, ner, ignore in, then yana, ner, nirai. That's perfect. Because it's 2 seed, right? And 2 seed in Asayappa is fine. So in this particular example, kan Vattalabada is counted. The extra consonant is counted as ner, because you don't have orasai except in certain situations, right? If you don't count, it would be just ner, right? Single asai is inappropriate except the last one in Venba, right? And so there it is counted, and tannana it is not counted, right? Okay, right. Right. So I mean, what it means to me is that it is the seed which decides, right? And the seed is chosen on the basis of osai. So the whole counting of letters or matrai is determined ultimately by the osai, right? So so if you look at that way, it's not arbitrary. See, first it looks like, okay, it's just like you do what meets your purpose, right? If somebody writes a bad poetry, you make a different analysis and then say it works, right? But I think it is the osai, through seal, controls these things. You see, it also would be relevant to mention, we'll see, that there is another Urupu, which is called Thuk, right? Which Ilambuna says that Thukaninum Vosainum Vokum, right? Both are synonymous, but I don't think he's right. Thuk is a one, I mean, Thuk means balance, right? So as a balance, it cuts a line into 1 or 2, right? So that keeps a balance of osai, right? So this alahid also plays that kind of role, right? You keep the osai, you see, which is the frame, right? And then drop and add and kind of thing. The problem is, at least I would say that. Anybody could make an objective description of osai. Right? It's all subjective understanding of osai. See, if you ask a Tamil Pulava, they say, oh, osai nallala. Right? But he cannot tell me why osai is nallala. Right? So this seems to be traditionally passed on, right? What osai is this, and they hear, and it's they are attuned to that particular osai. So this is also another relevant point is that when we were comparing Sayurial and the later or parallel description of Sayur, Meipadu is a urupu, is a unit, and it has a chapter. So this urupu is important. So there is a elaborate chapter on Meipadu. And Omai is a chapter, but it is not urupu, right? So it needs an explanation, right? And one explanation is, which is given by Tamilanal, the Tamil professor, is that Kutru is a urupu, so Omai would be taken care of by Kutru in Sangam poem. Therefore, Tolapia didn't mention Omai as a group. I think that's not a good argument because the Omai you get in Kutru is in only Aham poems, and that's only Ullure Omam. It doesn't take care of Yene Omam, right? So that argument doesn't cut much ice, right? So there must be some other reason why is that. So if you take Osai, Osai is neither a urupu nor a chapter, right? So it seems to me one could speculate that this Omai and Asai are some kind of fountainheads of poetry, right? Or some kind of energy which is making the poetry work, right? And that doesn't, I mean, one is visual, Omai, and Osai is oral thing. I mean, these are the two fundamental things about a poem, and for some reason, Osai is not described at all, right? So if my thinking is right, then because of its fountainhead nature, they are not part of Chayir. It's not a urupu. It's something different. So Omayel gets a separate chapter. In that case, Osai should get a separate chapter. Maybe Tolapim had another Isai novel where he described Osai, which is not available to us. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, in this understanding of Wose as a frame, which I think is helpful, how do you then understand Pa? Are you understanding Pa as determined by Wose, or there seems to be a kind of reciprocal relationship between Pa and Wose, depending on where you're looking in the tradition?
Yeah. See, my sense of okay. See, Sayuriel uses two urupu which are problematic. One is Yapu, which we mentioned in the last discussion. I think I would go with the explanation of some commentators that here Yapu is tying form with a meaning, and that's the Yapu he talks about, not just building blocks of poems. Along that line of thinking, Pa would be some kind of vague feel you get about reading a poem, right? When you read a poem, you get a feel about that. And whatever it is called, I think that is he means by Pa in that one.
And that feeling is based both on sound components and meaning?
Yes, right, right. So, I mean, meaning is an integral part of Seyul Urupu for Tolkapians. He even gives Porul Vahai. Porul Vahai would be what could be the subject of poetry, right? See, the Aramburu in Bambidu or Ahampuram or whatever it is. That is how the Parasuriya's interpretation of Urupu could be understood. As I said earlier, Parasuriya doesn't have a mechanical or biological view of Urupu, as many commentators think. He seems to think that kind of part-whole relationship. Once you know the part, you will know the whole, right? Remember that his imagined student asks, if Sayuriyal is about Sayur units, what is Sayur, right? He doesn't say what Sayur. He says that if you know all the units, he will know what Sayur is. So this, the underlying assumption is the parts make the whole. I mean, that is problematic, right? There is something more the part. Because yapu and purul are also parts, then that makes sense, right? So the parts make the whole, right? So the other one is the sound structure, like Vannam and Todai I would put under the sound structure, which I call embellishments, which would be there. This okay. Then okay. Yeah. Okay. Then if we go okay. You will also see that counting the letters to make asai is not a mechanical exercise, right? So Yapurangalakarihe gives this example: a u ariya arivil idai mahane. A u ariya arivil idai mahane. A u ariya means one who doesn't know the alphabet, right? So he says avu. So the question is, can avu be a nirai? Because two short vowels come, so it should be a nirai, right? But no, it is two nays, a, u, right? So a, u would form two nays. Why? I would say there's a pause there, right? A, u. It's not a, u, right? It's a, u. So what they say is, this is tarchuttu, right? Here a is not a word, it's a mention, right? It's mentioning a vowel, tarchuttu, right? And also they would bring vittisai. Vittisai is similar to past, right? So there is a break in that. So it is not, you have to take into account how the word, how the seed is pronounced to see what the asai is. And more interesting one is the other one. No, I think it's in the same verse. U ariya arivil idai magane, which means the ignorant shepherd who do not know the alphabet, right? Avu ariya arivil idai magane. The next line is no alayal nin nattai ni, right? No alayal nin nattai ni, right? Okay. So this no is a verb which means the suffering. Okay. Here this is one seed, no alayal. So you cannot say no and as one asai, making it a nirai asai, right? No which is there. That is because no is taken to be an imperative. No, right? So no in the sense of you suffer. I mean, it's addressed to the shepherd. You suffer. Alayal ninnattai. Don't make the adu suffer, right? So in that case, there is a break, right? No alayal, right? The commentator's explanation is when you have imperative yangol, then you count it as a separate asai. But from what we have seen so far, you could say that no alayal. I mean, with the imperative, there is a pause, right? So after the pause, the vowel doesn't add to the preceding vowel to make an asai. So the last example is Okay. வழங்கான் பொருள் காத்திருப்பானேல் அ இழந்தான் என்று எண்ணப்படும். The a is an exclamation, right? A like that, right? So that would be counted not as nirai but as true nir. Right? So all these, but again, the commentator's explanation is that is kuripu porul. Kuripu porul is not direct meaning, but it suggests surprise, right? But I think following the way I try to look at it, you could say there is a pause. Right? There is a pause there. So when there is a pause, then you don't count it as that. So without bringing in syntax or semantics, you could explain why these asai parsing is different different here, right? Then it's also incidentally you could say that this is okay. You'll see that later if you okay. Let's just take that Kurundohai poem which I have give you as handout. Kongudher வாழ்க்கை அஞ்சிரை தும்பி காமம் செப்பாது கண்டது மொழிமோ. That verse is Asariyappa, right? So let us see how the Asai parsing works, right? So one is Kongudher, you could take it as Ner Nirai. Kong is Ner, Kudher is Nirai. Then Valkai, right? Valkai is Ner, right? So so if you take it like that, you have Nirai Ner, right? Kongudher, right? Kude is Nirai and Val is Ner. So you have I prefer to call Tadaya collocation, following the linguistic notion of collocation between words. This is collocation between seals, right? So the requirement of Asariyappa is just the reverse of Venba, right? There it should be the opposite. Here it should be the same. So Asariyappa has the same Asai condition, right? So if you take it like Kudher, then Nirai Ner, which violates Asariyappa, right? Because of that, you would analyze it like Kongu as Nerbu and Ner as Ner, Ter as Ner. So Ner would meet that.
It wouldn't also, I mean, since Kongudher can be broken into two lexemes,
because Kongu,
Uder would also violate the word order.
That's why you can call it Nerbu. Otherwise, you cannot call it Nerbu, right? So that's an extra condition for OSI or seed formation requires the first to be treated as Nerbu, right? But it also meets the condition of Nerbu, that is the word boundary matches with the Asai boundary. So that's the secondary condition, right? Yeah.
If we were trying to scan this without the Ner or outside the Nerba system, would it then be Ner? Would we be able to drop the middle vowel?
No. If it suppose it is Venba, right? It will be taken as Ner Nirai Ner. If this verse is a Venba, then treating it as Ner Nirai Ner would meet the condition for a Venba.
Yes.
So it's a problem for Asariyappa or Asariyappa, not for Venba. Okay,
But
so
if
that raises the question, when you look at a poem, how do you know that it's Asariyappa, right, before coming into the question, right? So there are certain general characteristics of Asariyappa. You would see whether they are met. One is, I mean, the more obvious thing is the ending, which ends in A. There is a finite set of vowels, asais, which would end. So this ends in A. So the first approximate hypothesis is it could be in Asariyappa. The second one is in Asariyappa, the penultimate line will have one seed less. Right? So if others have four seeds, the last but one has three seeds, right? And that also would suggest, okay, this is an Asariyappa. And the third one is Asariyappa prefers two asai seed, irasai seed. So here most of the seeds are irasai. Therefore, it's not the only one for Asariyappa, but that also strengthens your earlier hypothesis that this is an Asariyappa, right? And the last one is Talai, right? And Talai, when it's problematic, if you have decided that's an Asariyappa, then you interpret Asai differently. If you have decided this poem is a Venba, then you say, oh, no problem, right? So the Asai passing depends on what type of poem you are talking about. So it is the features or properties of a particular part type would say how you do Asai parsing. Right? Yeah. So
it has to be the stanza form and not the seer. So basically you have to start from the stanza form and then go down.
I mean, it is easy for us when you see a printed version, right? Mm-hmm. When it is in Ole, it will be one line.
Right, exactly.
Right? So it gives a lot of leeway for the editors to say where you make the cut. Right?
Yeah.
So we will see one example of that. If you say the famous Avayar Purananuru poem, Siriyagat Pirine Yamakiyum Anne. Right? That one has at least 5 variations in terms of linings. Right? And Swaminathan himself has one set of lining in one edition and changes it to another set of lines in another edition. So the editing includes not only Padabedam of spellings and things, but also with line, how you cut the line. Right? That's where the tuku comes in. Right? Where you make the cut. Right? So I think our old editors like Swaminathan had some intuitive feeling about this osai and say, okay, cut here. If I am asked to make an edition, I wouldn't know where to make a cut, because that's the kind of intuitive feeling you have about osai, right? Then you take the next one, right? Anjirai Tumbi, right? Anjirai is clearly Ner Nirai, right? Ner Nirai, right? Tumbi is Ner Ner, right? So this is not appropriate for Asariyappa, right? Because it is Asariyappa is same Asai condition. Right? So here Nirai is followed by Ner, which is appropriate for Venba. Right? Venba is the opposite. It is heterogeneous collocation, whereas Asariyappa is homogeneous collocation. So how do you handle that? Right? So this is actually Ventalai. So Talai, which belongs to Venba. And then you make a rule that Asariyappa could allow the Talai of Venba in certain conditions. Okay? So this is one. So they have a view that only Venba is rigid. It doesn't allow any other thalai. You can have only the thalai. So another way of saying that, from my point of view, is Venba is the Pulavar's path. You have to follow the rules very strictly. Whereas others are more liberal, coming from common man singing kind of thing. Right? There's a lot of violations, you see, so-called violations in that. Right? So when you have this, you'll see more of it when you come to Thalai. They again introduce the concept of Thalai Mayakam. Remember the Thinai Mayakam? So you can have Thalai Mayakam. Right? As Thinai could have another Karupur, you could have a Thalai Mayakam. Right? And there they make a three-way distinction, interestingly. One is, I mean, this is all about Thalai, but I will just say here also. So interestingly, they use the word Tattu in its homophonous sense. Tattu has two senses. One is tap, tattu, right? Another is tattu in the sense bump, right? Tale tattiyadu, something like that. So they use it in both senses. In either sense, see, in the sense that when you say that Venba Thalai Tattugirathu means it taps with Venba, right? So other one is Thalai Tattugirathu means it's a bump, right? It doesn't fit here, but it comes here. It's a bump. So it is either taps or bumps, right? And so they could have chosen a different technical term. Well, anyway, the Tattu is used in two senses. So here, when you have this difference in Thalai, same with Seer, they have three concepts. One is Mayakam, where you expect one, you get another, but it is acceptable. And the second one is Thalai Viravu, right? Seer Viravu or Adi Viravu. The Viravu is, it qualifies to be both, like Viravu Thinai, it could be either masculine or feminine. Similarly, this could be either this or that. So this they use for poems which generally allow another Thalai. Right? So one is exceptional occurrence of that, and another is theoretically allowed to mixing of things. So if it is theoretically mixing, it's called Viravu, Thalai Viravi Vandadu, right? If it is specially allowed one, it would be Thalai Mayangi Vandadu. Right? And another one, I don't know how you will find it, they say Thalai Valuvi Vandadu, that is error. That is your kultram, right? You don't know how to write poems, right? You use the wrong Thalai, right? So maybe that is with the Osai again. See, you see which one is that. So here, this Vendalai is allowed because Asariyappa is liberal in that sense. It allows Vendalai to come within Asariya Thalai. Right? Again, they would have the same condition. That's why, see, the Ahaval Osai is not affected. Right? So that's what I'm not able to figure out how that works. Right? Okay. Then, if you go to the next one, common Cheppadu, that's a Ner, Cheppadu, Ner. Right? Ner, Nerbu, right? Common Cheppadu would be Nerbu, and then Kandadu would be Ner, and also it would be Kandadu would be Nerai, right? Yeah. Then Molimo would be Ner, right? Then
Nirai, right?
Sorry, Nirai, yeah, it is Nirai, right? So if you go on, you can pass it this way. If we come to the the next line, okay, பயிலியது கிளிய நட்பின் மயிலியர். Okay, this okay, பயிலியது would be நிறை, நிறை. So if you consider as niraibu, because ends in u, right? The next one starts with nirai. That would be a violation. Right? So the Asiriya part should have nirai, and therefore this u is counted even though it is Kutyalavaram. Right? Right? So instead of counting as niraibu, you count it as nirai. Then if you take
Can I ask a
yeah,
question?
sure, yeah.
So I just assumed that in terms of the tarai matching, that ner and nerbu would pattern together, and similarly nirai and niraibu would pattern together.
Yeah.
But if that would be a violation, then shouldn't sipparu kandaru also be a violation?
In line 2. Kamun sepade kandidi.
Why it is a violation?
Because we were counting that as a nerbu.
Nerbu
Sepadu.
No, it is considered as
I thought the same thing that Andrew. I thought that ner and nerbu were interchangeable for.
yeah, it should be because, but they don't say about talai in terms of nerbu nerebu, right? You can take it as neru also behaves like ner and nerebu as ner. Then okay.
But if I
No,
can say
let me say that.
as a voice without any image,
Pardon me?
if I can say something as a voice without any image, I think the problem is the third line, because pail iad, that is nirai bu.
Yeah, right.
And
so,
then the next one is
yeah,
nirai, but we
yeah.
said that
So
it's fine.
yeah,
Nirai.
I take it. So if we assume that ner and nerbu, nirai and niraibu are function in the same way for talai, then you can take it as niraibu, right? But as far as I know, maybe there is somewhere in that, there's no statement which says that these two are co-equal, right? For talai. Whatever I have seen, talai is stated only in terms of ner and nirai. And this is what Andrew proposes, that these are alike, right, in terms of talai. I mean, they are not alike in terms of matrai. They are not alike in terms of asai types. These are 4 different types. But you have to say that when it comes to talai, they are the same.
Right. So the rules.
So that would avoid the problems of differential alahidu, right? So we'll have to see the entire literature to see whether all cases where they say drop u would qualify to be CU, that is nerbu nerebu, and then the then talai is met. So that's an empirical question.
So but even for the systems that admits, even at the points in the history of the system where it admits nerbu and niraibu, rules for talai are only articulated at the level of ner and nirai. So
yeah,
for
the reason for that is Tolkapiam does not admit talai as a urupu. Talai as a urupu is in the later or parallel grammar. Right. The reason for Tolkapiam not admitting talai are twofold. One, he says that okay, 2 things. I mean, he doesn't say that, but there are 2 reasons for that. One is, I mean, one thing he says that, right, when you come to the oci, seed determines oci. I mean, they are very clear. Seed is oci. I mean, seed gives oci. And we will see when we come to seed, there are certain kinds of seeds which are specific to a particular pa. So what they call urichi, as opposed to yetchi, right? So if you say, I prefer to call it privileged seeds. There are some seeds that are privileged for a particular pot type. So Tolvapir makes a statement that if I think if you have the urichi, talai vahai venda. Right? So you don't have to count talai as long as the urichi is there. If Asariya Urichi is there, Asariya Urichi would have Nerbu Nerebu. Right? And another reason why Talai is not taken into account by Tolvapiyam is this. Tolvapiyam also talks about measuring a line not just in terms of seed, but also in terms of Eluthu. So, Eluthenni. So if you have another way of measuring the length of an adi, right, and talai may be ignored, see, which is needed for this kind of seed segmentation. So whatever his reasons are, talai he mentioned, talai as a term he uses it, but it is not a urupu.
Right.
Right. So that is probably a reason why Nerbu and Nirebu do not play a role in Talai. Right. So Talai rules are made by Yaparangalam, let's say, and by that time they have only Ner and Nirai, and they make all the statements only in terms of Nirai. So as Andrew just now said, we have to extrapolate, seeing that at the time of Tolvapiyam, he would have taken Nerbu and Nirebu are equal, and Ner and Nerbu and Nirai and Nirebu. If that's in, we had to rework the whole. I will read that whether there is anything to that effect to come to conclusion. There is one book called Sangayapiyal by Pichai. He talks about Yapu of Sangam poems. And I would see how he does. I haven't read that book yet. So that might give you a clue. But as of now, it's just an empirical question whether this hypothesis that you can equate these two would work. Yeah. As far as the later commentators are concerned, they analyze whenever they write comment on the Asai issue, say they go by the later one. They will say that this is not Alahidu, this is not measured. They don't raise this question, it should be measured this way if you have Nervu. So the Nervu Nerevu goes out of use.
Right.
You see, at the time of
any commentary. It's only in the Tolvapiyam, right?
Yeah, it's only in Tolvapiyam, not in any commentary, because Iramburana particularly reads the later ideas into Tolvapiyam. Both in a sense, Perasariyar and Ilamburnar try to preserve the integrity of Tolvapiyam, but in different ways. He says that Ilamburnar says Tolvapiyar has not left anything unsaid. Right? Everything I know now is there already. Right? Whereas Perasariyar says what you know is not there, so what you say is wrong. Right? So these are two different ways of protecting the tradition. In that way. So so I would at this point I would say that it is an empirical question, right? Then you go to the second 1, 2, 3, 4 fourth line, there is no problem in that line. You could work out whether, you could work out whether it meets Assyrian in terms of Asai and collocation between Asai. So when you come to the last line, Nariyavum Ulavo Ni Ariyum Puve. Right? So if you take Ulavo Ni, that has Nirai Ner Ner. Right? You have 3 Asai, which is not a favored situation for Assyrian. Assyrian's favored is Irasai, right? 2 Asai. You have 3 Asai. Right? So what they would say is that Assyrian allows Vensi. This would be this is Urichir of Venba. Right? Urichir of Venba is any Kachir, that is any Chir with 3 Asai which ends in Ner would be Kachir. Right? So that is appropriate for Venba, and that could also be used in Assyriapa. Right? So this would be, theory itself allows this, whereas the first one is Mayakam, which goes against the prescribed theory, but it is taken to be acceptable. Right? Okay. I would suggest that you go over this verse about Asai, and then if there are still problems, we'll see how the problem would be solved. Right. Then we go to the concept of Asai.
Excuse me, can we scan that verse till the end? Can we scan that verse till the end? This
Nariyavum Ulavo Ni Ariyum Puve. Nariyavum is.
So this is Nirai.
Nirai, and then it is Nirai, so fine for Assyriapa. Right?
Yeah.
And then O Ni is Ner. Right?
Okay. Then
so Ner is okay. 2 problems. Ner, and next one is Nirai, right? Ariyum is Nirai.
Yeah.
Right? That is not appropriate for Venba. Sorry, Assyriapa, right? But Ulavo Ni, as I said, is 3 as a Chir ending in Ner, and therefore it is Venba Chir, and therefore it will follow the Venba rule.
Talai conditions for Venba.
Yeah. So when you have Venba Chir in an Assyrian, the Talai also follows the Chir. Right? Talai is dependent on Chirs rather than Pa type. Right?
Okay, so but this Ariyum is then Nirai Ner, or is it Nirai Bu? It's Nirai Ner.
That's the question we discussed earlier. So you can take it as Nirai, or I'm sorry, you cannot take it as Nirai Bu because there is no word boundary there.
Okay.
And can't the Nirai Bu?
I take back. I think they take this also as Nirai Bu because here there is a Sandhi Nariyavum Ulavo. No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So it won't be taken as Nirai Bu because there is no word boundary. If you take it without Sandhi, it would be Nariyavum, which doesn't end in Wu, and therefore it doesn't qualify to be Nirai Bu.
I think she's talking about Ariyum, the penultimate, the third seer. Ariyum Buve. So that would be Nirai Ner, not Nirai Bu, both because it's the same word boundary problem, and also because it's a closed syllable
and
too,
the end
right?
is there,
Right.
Yeah.
If it is Yam, it won't qualify.
Right.
That's one answer to Andrew, right? If you, even though you can equate to Nerbu, Nerebu, there are another condition of word boundary for determining Nerbu, Nerebu. You have to see whether that is satisfied. Satisfied, right? So this is asai. My etymology for asai is asai. Tamil lexicon gives one meaning, that is to keep time. I think probably that is the root for this. Also, it has the another sense, which is be mobile, right? So in modern Tamil, if you say asayashut, it would be immobile property as opposed to mobile property, right? So if you take it like that, then it could mean that asai is the one which moves the poem. See, into that. That's a basic unit from which you make the seed, and then seed make the adder. So so it could be either one of these, because commentators also struggle that they try to give a karanapayar, I mean the reason for the word. As I said, Perasir makes clear that these are the words in the ordinary language, but used technically in prosody. But also they concede, after giving some etymology, they concede that iduri analum okkum. Iduri is opaque. Right? So even if you say opaque, it's okay. Right? So I think some tradition has been lost about this meaning. Right? So okay, the seer. Okay, couple of points I'll say about seer. We all know that seer is made of asai. So the seer would have the names like O-Rasachi, E-Rasachi, Mu-Rasachi, right? Depending on how many asais are in a chi, right? And as I said earlier, Orsai has a limited places, context in which it could occur. Usually it would be E-Rasai and Mu-Rasai, right? So that's one point about seed. And commentators, Ilamburana says that Seerdane was a Itarum. So the seed is the not only a structural unit, but it's also the unit to determine the wasai of the line. So it from that you could say the etymology would be seed is like seed, but things like that. They make it right. So the seed is the one which makes the wasai right. If the seed is wrong, then the wasai would become wrong. That could be the etymology of that. So here, let's see. Nalasachi is not mentioned in Tolapia. Right? So only three asai is the maximum for a seed. But Nalasachi is accepted in Yaparangalam, maybe Padinium also. Usually many of the things we find in Yaparangalam is in Kakit Padinium also. I haven't personally checked what they share, but lots of things are shared. And this is resisted by Perasir, as you would expect, this introduction of Nalasachi. And he makes a kind of tongue-in-cheek statement. He says something like to this effect, Nalasachi silar kolvar, ISHir yandum kandilar, something like that. So he says that some people have 4 asai, but the 5 asai people are nowhere to be found. So, and he also gives a reason which is not empirically true. He says that why Tolapi decides on a maximum of 3 seed is no word has more. Word of the ordinary language has more than 3 seeds. Right? So that is the reason, and he also makes a larger claim that Ulagatu Muriyallam, right? Not only Tamil, no language in the world would have more than 3. Obviously he excludes compounds in Sanskrit,
Sure.
and things like that. But if you take modern Tamil, it doesn't work. If you say Utkarndu Kondirukirana or something like that, it would have more see. But he also thinks about that. He gives Unna Nindran, right? Another thing is even a larger one. He says Alangariya Nindran, right? He says this has more than 3 series. Yes, true, but they divide like Alangariya Nindran. Right? So these are not.
So it's a good rule. I like that. Actually, for classical Tamil, it's true. It works.
I don't know. Somebody has to check whether all inflected forms would come under 3 C's in. Again, you have a problem where you make the cut.
Yeah, you
right?
complex ones you split up.
So it becomes kind of circular, right? Right? But maybe he's right. So he says that Tolhapiam is right because it's based on the natural language. Right? You don't have to make a special rule for the metrical language, right? But others don't follow that rule.
I mean, just to debunk that silliness a little bit more, right? I mean, they usually take as the units of words in those contexts the words used for memorization, like Kuvilangani and things like that, right? And those words, he's right. It's actually they're no longer words than that. You can't have 4 syllables.
Right. Because that is a canonical form for.
And so among the canonical forms they don't exist, and then highly inflected forms don't occur. Really
No, canonical form is a result of this rule.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's not the other way around. Right? Because you have 3 series, canonical form do not exist. Yeah, so there also when they introduced Forasai, though it's not popular, they created a canonical form, which would be something like Tema Tan Nilal, right? The cool shadow of sweet mango tree or something, something like that. And for Nirai also they have that. They have coined that. But interestingly, they could have also said to the fourth say something like Teman Tol or something like that. See, when you add Tol. But I don't know the reason. The reason is they don't add the fourth to the 3 SI, they add in the canonical form to the Irasai. Tema, then add another.
And just split, exactly.
Yeah, right. So it is not Temangani Suvai, which would add a Nirai to it, right? Instead of that, they say Tema Tannila. Right? So they do it like that. And if you see the literature, I never knew that there are so many canonical forms. You see, another is something like for Temang Kai is Manwal Khan, right? Near. And Puliwal Khan would be Near. I mean, they have some describing the women's body. I mean, there are so many terms for the canonical form. Right, okay.
But the 4 C are limited to the Vanjipa mostly, right? I mean, they really don't occur with the Ahaval and, very rarely. They're never in Benba. They're in Vanjipa.
Yes.
Vanjipa is the one where you find the 4,
right.
And that's a later structure anyway.
I don't know, because some people claim that Vanjipa is an earlier one. I mean, in terms of literary history, it is late, and also it goes out of use.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the use of 4 Asai Sira in Vanjipa, is that throughout the entire Vanjipa verse, or only in certain places?
Vanjipa could have 3 and then 4.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 and 3 are standard. I mean, in terms of empirical fact.
Because there's a in Kannada and Telugu verse, there's a similar kind of restrictions where you have the 2 syllable groups, 3 groups and 4-syllable groups with some variation within that, but the 4-syllable group is only used at the end of a line in certain verse forms. So there are positional restrictions as well.
This is true for the Vanjipatu. I mean, you actually find them more in the in the finite, the final form, the final structure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah. So just to link it with the earlier discussions with 4 asai versus 2 asai, the construction or formation of seed would differ depending on the asai number, right? If you have only if you have okay. Okay, let's say that you have E asai chief, that is 2 asai chief. You have only 4 possibilities: ner ner, ner nirai, nirai nirai, nirai ner. Right? So this is 2 to the power of 2, right? If you have 4 asais, it will be 2 to the power of 4, right? So that would be 16, right? Yeah, 16. So the number of seed types increases when you have 4 asai rather than 2 asai. So that's also a consequence of change in the theory. And that is also if you have 3 asai seed, right? So if you have only 2 asai, then the combination would be 2 to the power of 3, right? So that would be, 8. Right? Yeah. So
People
this,
with kids.
this.
exactly.
So if it is,
I'm just thinking. I
if
haven't
it
done
is,
this in a while.
if it is 4, it is 4 to the power of 3. That will be 64. Right? You have 64 possibilities of asai. Then that would also increase the complexity of defining an adi.
Right.
What could be the seed? Maybe simplification was also one of the motivations for Kalam
Yeah,
to do that. So this okay. Yeah. So and when you have 4 asai, it would increase much more than 64. So the grammarians and commentators seem to have some idea of I think it's called combinatorics or something like that. When you come to Todai, you would see that. I think Tolgapim itself mentions, I think that it is a commentator that added that. Tolgapir is never so specific in any of the things. He's always generalizer thing. So he says that so one Todai is some 35, some 1,000 combinations are possible. I saw on Andrew's website, it's called Sankhya, right, in Sanskrit, how you combine.
Yes, Sankhya is one of they're called pratyayas, but there's generally 6 of them in Sanskrit metrics.
Yeah, but I mean, they all have a
Cheviot wrote an
calculation.
article about this.
Pardon me?
Cheviot wrote an article about this. He's like the one person with sufficient mathematics and knowledge of Yapi in the world to do
About
this.
the combination.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he explains, because when you find the combinations of that, Ilamburanar, Nachinakinier and Perasiriyar differ in terms of the total number in thousands. Right? I don't know how the maths works works there, right? So okay, we'll stop here then, because to take the other. Okay. So the okay. Yeah. So that point I mentioned, I will just mention here. There are 2 types of Cs. One is called ELC. I mean, okay, EL is used in different senses in different combinations. When you say that, okay, EL asai, it is a natural asai, and EL seer is natural, but usually it is only irasai seer. So EL seer would be irasai. So irasai is taken to be a natural natural one, and then you have another concept called urichir, which is a cheer which is specific or privileged for a particular pot type that occurs more with movasai cheer, right? See, for example, as I said, for Venba Urichir is the all movasai cheers which end in kai or which end in ne. So the short form for that is Vensi. Venba Urichir is Vensi. So that is specific to Venba. But when it comes to Asariam, they say, and the Tolkapian says that Ner Nirai are Yersir, Nerbu Nirebu are Urichir. So they are Urichir specific to Asariam, you say. But I don't exactly understand the meaning, because you could have the syllabic structure of Nerbu Nirebu in any poem. But probably he means that you will have Nerbu Nirebu Asai more in Asariya than in other things. That's again an empirical question to see. So in terms of Irasai, Nerbu Nirebu are Asariya Urichi, and then the Venba has that Kaiche, and Vanchipa, so they take this 3 into 4, that gives 64, and 4 is taken over by Venba, right? So only Kaiche are 4 in 3 aside. So 64 minus 4 is 60, and all 60s are Vanjurichi. Right? So Vanjichir is very liberal in that sense. You can choose anyone, and then you can. And Kalipat doesn't have a chir. Sorry, Urichi doesn't have a Urichi. Right? So it is the Urichir is more significant with regard to Venba and with regard to Asariyappa. And when we come to Vosai, as I said earlier, 2 things determine Vosai. One is Urichir. So the Urichir gives a particular kind of Vosai. So if that is there, it will give the Vosai of that Pa. Right? And another is Tadai. And as I said, to Tolkappia make, if you have Urichir, don't worry about Tadai. So you will get the Vosai of that. So these 2 things in combination determine the Vosai of a poem. Right? Yeah. Okay.